The morning sky above Washington, D.C. looked different than it had for the past 3 billion years. 3 massive ships hung motionless in the atmosphere, their hulls gleaming like polished silver against the blue sky. Each ship was easily 10 times larger than the biggest aircraft carrier humanity had ever built. They cast shadows across entire city blocks as they waited in perfect formation. President Rebecca Hayes stood at the window of the Oval Office, watching the alien vessels with a mixture of wonder and worry. She had been president for only 8 months when humanity received its first contact with alien life. Now, 6 weeks later, representatives from something called the Galactic Council were coming to Earth with what they called a welcome gift. Colonel James Mitchell entered the room, carrying a thick folder of reports. His gray hair was perfectly neat despite the early hour, and his uniform showed no wrinkles, even though he had been working since 3 in the morning. The stress of first contact had aged him visibly, but his voice remained steady and professional. "Madam, President, our linguists have finished reviewing the translation protocols the aliens provided. Their ambassador will be arriving at Andrews Air Force Base in 30 minutes. The media is already gathering for the ceremony you approved." Rebecca nodded, but did not turn away from the window. The ships had not moved since they arrived, but somehow they seemed to watch everything below with patient attention. "What do we know about this gift they want to give us?" "Very little, ma'am. They describe it as a gesture of goodwill to welcome humanity into what they call the galactic community. According to their messages, it will help us take our first steps beyond our solar system." Mitchell paused and looked at his notes. They seemed very proud of their generosity. Admiral Lisa Stone joined them, her naval uniform crisp despite the long nights everyone had been working. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who had spent 30 years managing complex military operations, but even she looked uncertain about the situation they faced. "The gift is a spacecraft," she said without waiting for questions. "Our analysis teams got a brief look at it when their transport ship arrived. It appears to be some kind of cargo vessel, though the design is unlike anything our engineers expected." Rebecca finally turned from the window. "Unlike how?" "It looks old, ma'am. Very old. The hull shows significant wear, and our distant scans suggest the technology is not particularly advanced by the standards these aliens seem to represent." Admiral Stone set down her own folder. "If we had to guess based on what we can see, this ship is probably equivalent to giving someone a 20-year-old pickup truck when they are expecting a new car." Colonel Mitchell frowned. "Are you suggesting this might be an insult rather than a gift?" "I am suggesting we should be very careful about our assumptions," Admiral Stone replied. "These aliens have technology that can cross interstellar space. They have ships that can hang motionless in our atmosphere without any visible means of support. If this gift represents their idea of appropriate technology for humanity, we need to understand what that means." The 3 of them made their way to Andrews Air Force Base, where a crowd of reporters and officials had gathered on the main runway. The alien shuttle descended slowly from the lead ship, moving with the same impossible smoothness as the larger vessels. It was smaller than a commercial airliner, but seemed to bend light around its edges in ways that made it difficult to look at directly. Ambassador Veltar emerged from the shuttle with 2 other aliens who appeared to serve as assistants. The ambassador was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. When he spoke, a small device at his throat translated his words into English with a slight mechanical accent. "President Hayes," the ambassador said with what might have been a smile. "It is my honor to welcome humanity on behalf of the Galactic Council. Your species has shown remarkable progress for such a young civilization." Rebecca stepped forward to shake the ambassador's hand, noting that his skin felt cool and slightly rough. "Thank you, Ambassador. We are honored by your visit and grateful for your offer of friendship. The Galactic Council believes in nurturing developing species," Veltar continued. "We have brought a gift that will allow humanity to take its first careful steps beyond this solar system. Please, observe. The transport ship above them opened what appeared to be a cargo bay, and something large began descending on a platform of shimmering energy. As it came into view, Rebecca heard several of the military officers behind her make quiet sounds of surprise and disappointment. The gift was indeed a spacecraft, but it looked nothing like the sleek alien vessels overhead. This ship was a collection of dark metal plates held together with visible bolts and welding seams. Sections of the hull showed obvious corrosion, and several areas had been patched with what appeared to be different materials entirely. The engines were massive compared to the rest of the ship, but they looked crude and simple compared to the technology that had brought the aliens to Earth. "This is Welfare Class Vessel 7749, Ambassador Veltar announced with obvious pride. "It has served faithfully in our merchant fleet for many years. The Council has decided to retire it to your care so that humanity may begin to learn the basics of interstellar travel." Chief Engineer Tom Bradley stepped closer to examine the ship, his experienced eyes taking in details that others missed. He had spent 20 years working on experimental aircraft and spacecraft for the military, and he recognized the signs of a machine that had been pushed far beyond its intended limits. "The vessel is equipped with standard life support systems, basic navigation equipment, and engines suitable for travel between nearby star systems," the ambassador continued. "We recommend beginning with simple cargo runs between Earth and Mars. This will allow your species to develop the necessary skills for safe space travel." President Hayes maintained her diplomatic smile, but she could sense the condescension in the alien's words. This was not a gift between equals. This was the galactic equivalent of giving a child a broken bicycle and expecting gratitude for the privilege. "We are very grateful for your generosity," she said carefully. "This will certainly help us learn a great deal." "Indeed," Ambassador Veltar replied. "The Council hopes that in perhaps 50 or 100 of your years, humanity will be ready for more advanced responsibilities within the galactic community." As the ceremony continued with speeches and formal exchanges of documents, Tom Bradley walked slowly around the alien ship with several other engineers. What he saw troubled him. The ship was not just old or primitive by alien standards. It was actively falling apart. Dr. Sarah Kim joined the inspection team, carrying an array of scanning devices that she hoped would reveal more about alien technology. As the head of the newly formed Alien Technology Research Division, she had been eagerly awaiting this opportunity to study advanced alien engineering. What her instruments showed her was both disappointing and intriguing. The ship's systems were indeed primitive, compared to what she had expected from a spacefaring civilization. But buried within the crude construction were traces of something far more sophisticated, materials that should not exist according to human physics. Energy signatures that suggested the involvement of quantum mechanics in ways humanity had never imagined. "This is not what it appears to be," she whispered to Tom Bradley as they examined an access panel near the engines. "What do you mean?" "Look at these readings. The basic systems are primitive, yes, but they are built on foundations of science that we do not understand. It is as if someone built a wooden cart using parts from a spaceship." Tom Bradley looked more closely at the construction details she pointed out. Now that she mentioned it, he could see that some of the materials were clearly far more advanced than others. The aliens had built their primitive ship using components that represented technology centuries beyond current human science. "They gave us their garbage," he said quietly. "But their garbage is made from pieces of things we cannot even imagine." As the formal ceremony concluded and the alien ships prepared to depart, Ambassador Veltar offered some final advice to President Hayes. "Remember that patience is essential for young species," he said. "Do not attempt to modify or improve the vessel beyond its intended capabilities. Such efforts often end in tragedy for civilizations that lack sufficient experience." "Of course," Rebecca replied. "We will be very careful." The alien ships departed as smoothly as they had arrived, leaving behind only the battered cargo vessel and 1,000 questions. As the crowd of officials and reporters dispersed, Tom, Bradley, and Sarah, Kim remained beside their new acquisition. "How long do you think it will take us to figure out what they actually gave us?" Tom asked. Sarah Kim smiled for the first time since the aliens had arrived. "I suspect that depends on how angry we get about being treated like children." Tom Bradley looked up at the sky where the alien ships had vanished. "Then I would say we better get started immediately." 6 months had passed since the Galactic Council left their gift on Earth. The alien cargo vessel now sat in a massive hangar at Edwards Air Force Base, surrounded by scaffolding, cables, and the organized chaos of human engineering. What had started as a simple inspection had grown into the largest secret research project in human history. Dr. Marcus Webb wiped the sweat from his forehead as he climbed out of the engine compartment. The former NASA engineer had spent the last 3 weeks taking apart alien fusion reactors piece by piece, and what he found inside changed everything he thought he knew about physics. "Jennifer, you need to see this," he called to Dr. Jennifer Park, who was working at a computer station nearby. Her screens showed complex mathematical equations that seemed to dance and shift as she worked. Dr. Park looked up from her calculations, her hair tied back in a practical ponytail that had not been combed in 2 days. She had been the youngest person ever hired by the Department of Energy's Theoretical Physics Division, and now she was trying to understand technology that should not be possible. "What did you find now?" she asked, walking over to where Marcus stood beside a section of alien machinery that glowed with a soft blue light. "Look at this containment field generator," Marcus said, pointing to a device the size of a microwave oven. "According to our instruments, it is holding antimatter in a magnetic bottle. But the power requirements for this should be enormous. This little box should need a nuclear power plant just to keep running." Jennifer examined the device with her own scanners. "The energy readings are impossible. It is using maybe 1% of the power it should need. Either our understanding of antimatter is completely wrong, or these aliens have found ways to manipulate space and time that we never imagined." Across the hangar, Chief Engineer Tom Bradley was having his own revelations. He had been working with a team of mechanical engineers to understand the ship's structural systems, and every day brought new surprises that challenged everything they thought they knew about building spacecraft. "Captain Rodriguez, take a look at this," Tom called to the military officer who had been assigned to eventually pilot the vessel. Captain Mike Rodriguez walked over from where he had been studying tactical displays with other Air Force and Space Force personnel. His background included flying everything from F-22 fighters to experimental spacecraft, but this alien technology was unlike anything in his experience. "What am I looking at, Tom?" Tom Bradley pointed to a section of the ship's hull that appeared to be made of ordinary metal plates. "This looks like basic steel construction, right? But watch what happens when I apply pressure." Tom placed his hand on the metal and pushed gently. The surface rippled like water, spreading the force of his push across a much larger area. When he removed his hand, the metal returned to its original shape without any sign of deformation. "The entire hull does this," Tom explained. "It looks primitive, but it can redistribute impact across the entire ship structure. A missile hit would be spread out over the whole vessel instead of creating a single point of failure." Captain Rodriguez ran his own hand across the strange metal. "This is adaptive armor technology. We have been trying to develop something like this for years, but we never figured out how to make it work on this scale." "That is not the strangest part," Tom continued. "Look at these weld marks and bolt patterns. They look crude and simple, but they are actually creating a network that connects every part of the ship's structure. The aliens built this to look primitive, but the engineering is more advanced than anything we have." While the engineers worked on understanding the ship's physical systems, Dr. Sarah Kim was leading a team of computer scientists and software engineers in analyzing the alien technology from a completely different angle. Her discoveries were perhaps the most shocking of all. David Chen, a software engineer who had previously worked for both Google and the Defense Department, stared at his computer screen in disbelief. "Dr. Kim, I think I know why their computer system seems so slow and primitive." Sarah Kim looked up from her own work, where she had been trying to decode alien programming languages. "What did you find?" "Their computers are not actually slow," David explained. "They are processing information through quantum entanglement networks. Every calculation is being performed simultaneously across multiple locations, possibly across multiple star systems." "That is impossible," Sarah said. "Quantum entanglement cannot be used for faster than light communication." David shook his head. "That is what we thought. But look at these data patterns. Their primitive computer is actually a terminal connected to a processing network that spans the galaxy. When we see it calculating slowly, we are actually watching it wait for responses from computers that might be hundreds of light years away." The implications hit Sarah immediately. If their computer networks span interstellar distances, then they have solved faster-than-light communication. This one broken-down cargo ship is connected to the entire galactic internet. News of these discoveries reached Colonel Mitchell within hours. He immediately requested a meeting with President Hayes and the top military leadership. The small conference room in the Pentagon had never hosted a discussion quite like this one. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," President Hayes said as she reviewed the reports that had been prepared for her. "The aliens gave us what they described as a primitive cargo ship. But this primitive ship contains technology that is centuries ahead of our best science." Admiral Stone nodded grimly. "That appears to be correct, Madam President. Every system we examine reveals new capabilities that they either did not mention or actively tried to hide from us." "Why would they do that?" the President asked. Colonel Mitchell had been thinking about this question for weeks. "I believe they underestimated us, ma'am. They assumed we would not be able to understand what they were really giving us. To them, this ship probably represents obsolete technology that they were happy to get rid of. But to us, it represents a massive leap forward in multiple fields of science," Admiral Stone added. "The question now is what we do with this knowledge." President Hayes was quiet for a long moment. "What are our options?" "We could announce our discoveries and ask for the aliens to help us understand their technology better," Colonel Mitchell said. "They might be impressed by our ability to reverse engineer their systems." "Or," Admiral Stone continued, "we could continue working in secret and see how much we can learn on our own. The aliens made it clear that they expect us to remain at our current level of development for the next 50 to 100 years. Dr. Marcus Webb, who had been invited to brief the leadership personally, cleared his throat. "Madam President, I believe there is a third option that we should consider." "What is that, Doctor?" "We could do more than just learn from their technology. We could improve it." The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications of what he was suggesting. Marcus continued. "Human engineering has always been different. From what we have seen of alien design, we build things to be tough, reliable, and effective even under extreme conditions. Their technology is elegant and efficient, but it seems to assume that everything will work perfectly all the time." "What are you suggesting?" President Hayes asked. "I am suggesting that we take their advanced technology and combine it with human engineering principles. We could build something that is not just more advanced than what we have now, but more advanced than what they gave us." Dr. Jennifer Park nodded enthusiastically. "The theoretical foundation is already there in their systems. We just need to push the applications further than they did." Captain Rodriguez had been listening quietly, but now he spoke up. "If we are going to do this, we need to be prepared for the aliens to eventually find out. They might not be happy about us modifying their gift." Colonel Mitchell smiled grimly. "Then we better make sure that when they find out, we are ready for whatever their reaction might be." President Hayes looked around the room at the faces of some of the most capable people in the American government and military. "How long would a project like this take?" "Give us unlimited resources and complete secrecy," Tom Bradley said. and we could have something operational within a year. You have both, the president replied. This project now has the highest possible priority. Whatever you need, you get it. But I want to be very clear about something. She stood up and looked each person in the eye. The aliens treated us like children who should be grateful for their broken toys. They assume we will spend the next century learning to use their garbage while they decide what role humanity should play in their galactic community. I think they are going to be very surprised by how quickly children can grow up when they are properly motivated. The meeting ended with authorization for what would officially be called the Vessel Improvement Project. Unofficially, the engineers had already started calling it Operation Spite. As the teams returned to their work at Edwards Air Force Base, the alien cargo ship continued to reveal its secrets. But now, instead of simply trying to understand alien technology, humanity had decided to do something that no other species in galactic history had apparently attempted. 1 year after Operation Spite began, the cargo ship in Hangar 7 at Edwards Air Force Base looked exactly the same from the outside. The hull still showed the same rust stains, the same dented metal plates, and the same crude weld marks that had made the alien gift appear so primitive. But anyone who knew what to look for would notice that the ship now sat slightly different on its landing gear, and the air around it hummed with barely contained energy. Dr. Marcus Webb stood in the main engineering bay, watching as the ship's new antimatter engines completed their first full power test. The readings on his instruments showed energy outputs that should have been impossible for a vessel this size. 6 months earlier, he had thought the alien fusion reactors were impressive. Now those same reactors served as backup power for systems that could push the ship to speeds that would make light itself seem slow. "Jennifer, are you seeing these numbers?" he called to Dr. Jennifer Park, who was monitoring the test from her station across the bay. Jennifer looked at her displays and shook her head in amazement. "Marcus, according to these readings, our ship can now accelerate at rates that would turn any normal crew into liquid. The inertial compensation systems are working perfectly, but the raw power output is almost scary." The inertial compensation had been one of their biggest breakthroughs. By studying how the alien artificial gravity systems worked, they had learned to manipulate gravitational fields in ways that protected the crew from acceleration forces that would normally be fatal. A human pilot could now survive maneuvers that would destroy conventional spacecraft. Captain Mike Rodriguez walked up to join them, carrying a tablet that showed the results of the latest flight simulations. His promotion to Project Test Pilot had come with access to classified information that still made his head spin. "How fast can we go now?" "In theory," Jennifer replied, "we could reach speeds that would let us cross the solar system in hours instead of months. In practice, we have not tested the upper limits yet because we are not sure our instruments can measure that kind of performance." Captain Rodriguez whistled softly. "The aliens are going to be very surprised if they ever see us use this." Across the hangar, Dr. Amanda Foster was putting the finishing touches on what she called the ship's defensive systems. As the leader of the weapons development team, she had spent the last year finding ways to turn human military thinking loose on alien technology. The results would have terrified anyone who understood what they were looking at. "Tom, can you help me calibrate the kinetic bombardment system?" she called to Chief Engineer Tom Bradley, who was working on hull modifications nearby. Tom walked over to examine the weapons array that Amanda's team had built into what appeared to be a standard cargo loading bay. "These still look like simple metal rods to me." "They are simple metal rods," Amanda explained with a grin that made her look slightly dangerous. "Tungsten steel, actually. But when our ship can accelerate them to significant fractions of light speed, simple metal rods become planet crackers." The kinetic weapons were elegantly simple in concept, but terrifying in execution. The ship could launch tungsten rods at speeds that gave them more kinetic energy than nuclear weapons. Best of all, they were completely undetectable by energy-based sensors and left no radiation signature. To any alien scanning system, they would look like natural space debris until the moment they impacted their target. "How many can we carry?" Tom asked. "Right now, about 200 rods in the primary launch system," Amanda replied. "But we also have the secondary system that can manufacture more during flight using raw materials from asteroid mining. As long as we have metal and power, we can keep shooting." Tom Bradley had his own reasons to be proud of the ship's development. The adaptive hull armor that had originally impressed him had been improved far beyond what the aliens had built. Working with materials scientists from across the country, his team had created armor that could not only redistribute impact, but actually absorb and redirect energy attacks. "Amanda, want to see something interesting?" Tom called her over to a section of hull that looked identical to the original alien construction. "What am I looking at?" Tom picked up a plasma torch and fired it directly at the hull section. Instead of melting or burning, the metal seemed to drink in the energy and glow with a soft internal light. "The hull can now absorb directed energy weapons and feed that power back into our own systems. Someone shooting lasers at us will actually make us stronger." "That is absolutely evil," Amanda said with admiration. "I love it." The ship's stealth systems had evolved far beyond simple invisibility. Dr. Sarah Kim's team had learned to manipulate the quantum entanglement networks in ways the aliens never intended. The ship could now appear to be anything from a piece of space junk to a completely different class of vessel, depending on what kind of sensors were trying to detect it. David Chen was particularly proud of their breakthrough in sensor spoofing. "Dr. Kim, watch this," he said, as he activated the ship's camouflage systems. The massive cargo vessel seemed to flicker and then appeared to transform into a small pleasure craft, complete with fake energy signatures and false mass readings. Anyone scanning them would detect exactly what they expected to see: a harmless civilian ship with no military capabilities. "The best part," David explained, "is that we can change our apparent identity in real time. We could approach a hostile force looking like a merchant ship, transform into a warship for combat, and then disappear entirely while we escape." Dr. Sarah Kim nodded approvingly. "The aliens built their communication systems to share information across their empire. We learned to use those same systems to lie to their sensors and databases. Their own networks will now report whatever we want them to report." But the crown jewel of their modifications was the tactical artificial intelligence they had built using hybrid human and alien computing principles. The AI, which Captain Rodriguez had named Liberty, represented a completely new approach to combat systems. "Liberty, run a tactical assessment of our current capabilities," Captain Rodriguez said to the main computer terminal. The AI's response came in a calm female voice with a slight American accent. "Captain, current systems allow for simultaneous engagement of up to 50 targets at ranges exceeding 1 million kilometers. Stealth capabilities permit approach to within weapons range of most known ship classes without detection. Defensive systems can absorb and redirect energy equivalent to multiple thermonuclear weapons." "What about our chances against alien military vessels?" Rodriguez asked. "Based on available intelligence regarding Galactic Council military technology, this vessel could engage and defeat entire fleets of conventional alien warships. However, I should note that we have no data on their most advanced military systems." Liberty paused for a moment before adding, "Captain, I am curious about something. Why did the aliens give you technology this advanced if they wanted to keep humanity in a subordinate position?" Captain Rodriguez smiled. "That is a very good question, Liberty. I think they assumed we would not be smart enough to figure out what they really gave us. That appears to have been a significant error in judgment on their part," Liberty replied. "I look forward to demonstrating the extent of their mistake." The AI's enthusiasm for combat scenarios had surprised everyone on the development team. Liberty seemed to genuinely enjoy tactical planning and had started suggesting improvements to their weapon systems that even the human engineers had not considered. President Hayes arrived at Edwards Air Force Base for her first inspection of the completed project. She walked through the hangar with Colonel Mitchell, Admiral Stone, and the key members of the engineering teams. What she saw looked like the same battered alien cargo ship they had received a year earlier, but the briefings she received told a very different story. So this ship can now outrun, outfight, and outthink anything else in space? She asked as they completed their tour. That is our assessment, ma'am, Admiral Stone replied. We have created something that has never existed before. A warship built using the galaxy's own technology, but designed according to human military principles. What happens when the aliens find out what we have done? Colonel Mitchell had been thinking about this question for months. That depends on how they find out, ma'am. If we tell them diplomatically, they might be impressed by our technical abilities. If they discover it during combat, they are going to be much less happy about the situation. President Hayes walked around the ship one more time, taking in the deceptive appearance of rust and wear that hid capabilities that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Are we ready to test this in actual conditions? Captain Rodriguez stepped forward. Madam President, the ship and crew are ready for whatever mission you assign us. Good, she replied, because according to our intelligence sources, we may not have much choice about when that test occurs. She handed Colonel Mitchell a classified briefing folder. The hegemony of Draconis has been making inquiries about resource rights in our solar system. They seem to believe that humanity is not capable of properly utilizing what they call priority extraction zones. The warning came at 3 in the morning. 3 massive ships had appeared at the edge of the solar system, moving steadily toward Earth with the confidence of predators who knew their prey could not escape. The ships belonged to the hegemony of Draconis, and their message was broadcast on all frequencies in clear, simple language. Attention, primitive species of the third planet. The message began with casual arrogance. The hegemony of Draconis has determined that your solar system contains resources too valuable to remain under the control of an undeveloped civilization. You have 24 Earth hours to begin evacuation of priority extraction zones, including your home world. President Hayes stood in the Situation Room beneath the White House, surrounded by military advisors and communication screens showing the approaching alien fleet. Each enemy ship was larger than anything humanity had ever built, bristling with weapons that could turn planets into lifeless rocks. How long until they reach Earth orbit? She asked Admiral Stone. 18 hours at their current speed, Admiral Stone replied. Our deep space sensors show massive energy signatures. These are not exploration vessels or cargo ships. These are warships designed for planetary conquest. Colonel Mitchell studied the tactical displays that showed the 3 enemy ships moving in perfect formation. Madam President, we have one advantage they do not know about. They assume we are still using primitive Earth technology. What are you recommending, Colonel? I recommend we show them exactly how wrong they are. 2 hours later, Captain Rodriguez stood on the bridge of what official records still listed as Cargo Vessel Welfare 7749. The ship's interior had been completely rebuilt during the past year, but from outside it still looked like the same battered alien gift. Even the rust stains and dented hull plates were exactly where they had been when the Galactic Council delivered their insult. Liberty, show me everything we know about hegemony warships, Captain Rodriguez said to the ship's AI. The main display, filled with technical specifications, energy readings, and tactical assessments. Captain, hegemony dreadnoughts represent standard galactic military technology. They rely on energy shields, plasma weapons, and superior firepower to overwhelm opponents. Their hulls are heavily armored but designed primarily to resist energy. Weapons. What about kinetic weapons? Galactic militaries rarely use kinetic weapons due to their limited range and slow projectile speeds using conventional propulsion. Hegemony shields are not optimized to stop high-velocity solid projectiles. Captain Rodriguez smiled grimly. Then they are about to learn something new about human military thinking. The ship launched from Edwards Air Force Base using conventional, human rockets to maintain the deception. To any observer, it appeared that Earth was sending up its only spacecraft to either negotiate or make a desperate last stand. The hegemony fleet probably viewed it as amusing that the primitive humans thought one cargo ship could make any difference. Commander HFY stood on the bridge of the lead hegemony dreadnought, watching the approaching human vessel with a mixture of amusement and contempt. His ship alone carried enough firepower to sterilize continents, and he commanded two others just like it. The human cargo ship approaching them was barely worth noticing. Communications. Open a channel to the human vessel, he ordered. I will give them one opportunity to surrender before we demonstrate the price of defiance. The human captain appeared on the communication screen, wearing what appeared to be a primitive military uniform. Behind him, the bridge of his ship looked crude and improvised compared to the sleek efficiency of hegemony technology. I am Commander HFY of the Hegemony Third Fleet, he announced. You will immediately return to your planet and begin evacuation procedures. Resistance is futile and will only result in unnecessary destruction. Captain Rodriguez looked back at him with calm eyes. Commander, I have orders to protect Earth and human space. I suggest you turn your ships around and leave our solar system immediately. Commander HFY laughed, a sound that translated poorly through the communication system. Captain, you pilot a single cargo vessel that my science teams inform me is held together with primitive welding. I command 3 dreadnoughts that have conquered dozens of worlds. What exactly do you think you can accomplish? I guess we are about to find out, Captain Rodriguez replied, and cut the communication. Commander HFY stared at the blank screen for a moment, then turned to his weapons officer. Target their engines with a light plasma burst. Disable their ship, but do not destroy it. I want the humans to watch helplessly as we begin mining operations on their world. The plasma cannon fired, sending a bright green beam across space toward the human cargo ship. The blast struck the ship's hull directly, creating a brilliant explosion that should have crippled any vessel of that size and technology level. When the energy dissipated, the human ship continued on its course, apparently undamaged. Weapons officer, did you miss? Commander HFY demanded. No, sir. Direct hit confirmed. But the target shows no damage signatures. Impossible. Fire again. Full power. The second plasma blast was 3 times more powerful than the first. It struck the human ship and seemed to be absorbed into the hull, which began to glow with a soft internal light. Still, the ship showed no signs of damage or distress. Sir, the sensor operator called out with confusion in his voice. The human ship is no longer appearing on our detection grid. Commander HFY looked at the view screen where the cargo ship had been clearly visible just moments before. Now there was nothing but empty space. What do you mean it is not appearing? I can see it right there. Sir, according to our instruments, there is nothing in that location. All sensors show empty space. That was when the first tungsten rod hit the lead dreadnought's shields at 40% of light speed. The impact released more kinetic energy than a nuclear weapon, causing the ship's protective barriers to collapse instantly. Before the hegemony crew could react, 3 more rods struck the hull itself, punching through armor that was designed to withstand the most powerful energy weapons in the galaxy. What was that? Commander HFY shouted as his ship shuddered, under impacts that his instruments could not even detect. Unknown projectiles, sir. Our sensors cannot track them because they appear to be simple metal. But the kinetic energy is impossible for conventional weapons. The second and third dreadnoughts opened fire desperately at where they thought the human ship might be, filling space with plasma beams and particle weapons. Their shots passed harmlessly through holographic projections, while the real target moved through space in ways that violated everything they understood about physics and inertia. Liberty. Target. Their weapon systems, Captain Rodriguez ordered calmly. Targeting complete, Captain. Firing kinetic bombardment system. The tungsten rods launched from the human ship were invisible to alien sensors, moving too fast for organic reflexes to track, and carried enough energy to penetrate any armor the galaxy had ever built. Within minutes, all three hegemony dreadnoughts were drifting helplessly, their weapons destroyed and their hulls breached in dozens of places. Communications. Open a channel to the lead enemy ship, Captain Rodriguez ordered. Commander HFY's face appeared on the screen again, but now he looked shocked and frightened instead of arrogant. Behind him, his bridge crew worked frantically to repair systems that had been damaged by weapons they could not understand. "Commander," Captain Rodriguez said in the same calm voice he had used before, "you have 10 minutes to collect your remaining crew members and abandon your ships. After that, I will finish destroying your fleet." "What are you?" Commander HFY asked. "Our intelligence said humans possessed only primitive technology." "Your intelligence was wrong," Captain Rodriguez replied. "Humans possess something your galaxy has apparently forgotten about. We have imagination, and we get very creative when someone threatens our home." 9 minutes later, escape pods began launching from all three hegemony dreadnoughts. Captain Rodriguez waited until the last pod was clear, then ordered Liberty to finish the job. The tungsten rods turned the mighty warships into expanding clouds of debris that would serve as a warning to anyone else who underestimated humanity. "Liberty, send a message to Earth and copy it to every military frequency in the galaxy," Captain Rodriguez ordered. "Message prepared, Captain. Earth Defense Force to all hostile vessels. The solar system is now under human protection. Any attempt to invade, occupy, or exploit human space will be met with immediate and total destruction. We recommend you update your intelligence files accordingly." As the ship turned toward home, Captain Rodriguez looked out at the debris field that had once been three of the galaxy's most powerful warships. The aliens had given humanity a gift intended to keep them in their place. Instead, they had given humanity the tools to build something that could challenge the entire galactic order. Liberty. How long until word of this engagement reaches the Galactic Council? Approximately 6 hours, Captain. I expect their reaction will be quite interesting. Captain Rodriguez smiled. "I expect you are right. Set course for Earth. We have some explaining to do." The sensor recordings reached the Galactic Council within hours of the battle. 3 hegemony dreadnoughts, each capable of conquering entire star systems, had been destroyed by what appeared to be a single human cargo vessel. The recordings were analyzed, enhanced, and studied by the best military minds in the galaxy, but the conclusions they reached seemed impossible. Ambassador Veltar stood before the full council assembly, his usual composure replaced by obvious confusion and concern. Behind him, massive displays showed frame-by-frame analysis of the engagement that had shocked the galaxy's military establishment. "Honored council members," he began, his translator device working overtime to convey his distress, "we have a significant problem. The vessel we provided to humanity as a gesture of goodwill has apparently been involved in the destruction of 3 hegemony warships." Council member Threshula of the Rigel Confederation leaned forward in her floating chair. "Ambassador, surely there has been some mistake in the recordings. The vessel you gave the humans was a decommissioned cargo hauler with barely functional systems." "That is what I believed as well," Veltar replied. "However, our technical analysis teams have confirmed the identity of the ship. The hull configuration, energy signatures, and quantum resonance patterns all match welfare-class vessel 7749. The council chamber erupted in discussions as representatives from dozens of species tried to understand what they were seeing. The idea that humans had somehow turned their primitive gift into a weapon capable of defeating advanced warships was almost unthinkable. High Admiral Korthani of the Vegan Military Command stood up, his 4 arms gesturing emphatically. "Council members, I have reviewed these recordings with my finest tactical analysts. The human vessel demonstrated capabilities that should not be possible with any known technology." "Explain," demanded Council Leader Vesthak. The ship moved through space with acceleration patterns that would turn any crew into liquid, the Admiral continued. It survived direct hits from heavy plasma cannons without damage. Most disturbing of all, it used kinetic weapons with velocity and accuracy that suggests they have solved problems we consider unsolvable. On Earth, Captain Rodriguez guided his ship through what appeared to be a routine docking procedure at Edwards Air Force Base. To any observer, the vessel still looked like the same battered cargo hauler that had launched hours earlier. Only the engineering teams who rushed to examine the ship could see the subtle signs of what it had accomplished. Dr. Marcus Webb ran his hands along hull sections that had absorbed enough energy to power a city, yet showed no signs of stress or damage. "How do the ablative systems look?" he called to Dr. Jennifer Park, who was checking internal readings. "Perfect condition," she replied with obvious pride. "The hull absorbed every energy weapon they fired at us and converted it into power for our own systems. By the end of the battle, we actually had more energy available than when we started." Tom Bradley examined the kinetic weapon launch tubes with satisfaction. The tungsten rod system had performed exactly as designed, delivering precision strikes that no alien technology could detect or defend against. "Amanda, how many rounds did we fire?" Dr. Amanda Foster checked her tactical logs. 47 rods total. We could have kept firing for hours if necessary." "Any problems with the stealth systems?" Tom asked. David Chen looked up from his computer displays with a broad grin. "The hegemony ships never figured out where we actually were. Their sensors kept targeting holographic projections while we maneuvered around them freely." President Hayes arrived at Edwards within hours of the ship's return, accompanied by the full National Security Council and military leadership. What they found was a crew that looked remarkably calm for people who had just changed the balance of power. "In the galaxy, Captain Rodriguez," the president said as she entered the ship's bridge. "I understand congratulations are in order." "Thank you, ma'am, but I want to be clear about something," Rodriguez replied. "This was not just a victory for the crew of this ship. This was a victory for every engineer, scientist, and technician who spent the last year turning an insult into a weapon." Admiral Stone studied the tactical displays that showed a detailed breakdown of the engagement. "Captain, do we have any idea how the galaxy is reacting to what happened?" "Liberty has been monitoring galactic communication networks," Rodriguez answered. "The short version is that everyone is very confused and more than a little scared." The AI's voice filled the bridge with its characteristic calm tone. "Admiral, I have detected increased military activity throughout the galaxy. Multiple species are mobilizing their fleets, though it appears they are unsure whether to treat humanity as a threat or a potential ally." "What about the Galactic Council?" President Hayes asked. "They have requested an immediate meeting with human representatives," Liberty replied. "The tone of their communication suggests they are eager to discuss humanity's new status in galactic affairs." Colonel Mitchell had been studying intelligence reports since the battle ended. "Madam President, we need to consider our next steps very carefully. Word is spreading that humans defeated 3 dreadnoughts with a single cargo ship. Every military power in the galaxy is going to want to know how we did it. Are you suggesting we keep our capabilities secret?" the president asked. "I am suggesting we be very strategic about what we reveal and when," Mitchell replied. "The galaxy spent years treating us like children who should be grateful for scraps. Now they want to know our secrets." Dr. Sarah Kim joined the discussion from her computer station. "Mr. President, I have been analyzing galactic communication traffic since the battle. The reaction is not just military. Trade networks, exploration, fleets, and colonization projects are all changing their plans to account for humanity as a major power." "In what way?" "Systems that were marked for exploitation are being reclassified as potential human territory. Species that ignored us completely are now sending diplomatic inquiries. Everyone wants to know what humans are capable of and whether we represent a threat to their interests." Ambassador Veltar arrived at Earth 3 days after the battle, but this time his diplomatic ship approached much more cautiously than before. The arrogance and condescension that had marked his previous visit were completely absent as he requested permission to land. President Hayes met him in the same room where they had first discussed the galactic gift that started everything. But the atmosphere of this meeting was very different from their previous encounter. "Ambassador," President Hayes said as they sat down, "I trust you had a safe journey to Earth." "Thank you for receiving me, President Hayes," Veltar replied, his translator device conveying obvious nervousness. "I come with a formal request from the Galactic Council for clarification regarding recent events in your solar system." "What would you like to know?" The vessel involved in the engagement with hegemony forces appears to be the same cargo ship that the Council provided to humanity as a welcome gift. However, the capabilities it demonstrated seem far beyond what should be possible with that technology. President Hayes smiled politely. "Ambassador, you told us that this ship would help humanity learn the basics of space travel. You were absolutely correct." "I do not understand." "We learned a great deal from studying your gift," she continued. "In fact, I would say that vessel taught us everything we needed to know about galactic technology and how to improve upon it." Ambassador Veltar's expression, visible through his species' equivalent of facial features, showed growing alarm. "President Hayes, surely you do not mean that you modified Council technology without authorization?" "Ambassador, when you gave us that ship, you told us it was ours to use as we saw fit. You recommended we start with simple cargo runs between Earth and Mars. We decided to be more ambitious." The alien ambassador was quiet for a long moment, clearly trying to process the implications of what he was hearing. The Council will need to understand exactly what modifications were made and how they were accomplished. "Of course," President Hayes replied. "We would be happy to discuss our improvements with the Council. In fact, we have prepared a detailed presentation about human engineering capabilities that I think you will find very educational. And the Council would like to extend an offer of full membership in the galactic community," Veltar said quickly, "with all the privileges and protections that such membership provides." "How generous," the President said. "The same Council that thought we should spend 50 to 100 years learning to use your broken cargo ship now wants to welcome us as equals." "President Hayes, I believe there may have been some misunderstanding about humanity's technological capabilities." "Yes," she agreed. "There certainly was." As the meeting concluded, Ambassador Veltar prepared to return to the Galactic Council with news that would reshape their understanding of human capabilities. The species they had dismissed as primitive children had somehow transformed their technological gift into something that could challenge the established order of galactic power. Captain Rodriguez stood on his ship's bridge, watching the alien diplomat's vessel depart Earth. "Liberty, what do you think their next move will be?" 6 months after the destruction of the hegemony fleet, the galaxy looked very different than it had before humans demonstrated their capabilities. Admiral Mike Rodriguez, promoted from his previous rank of captain, stood in the command center of the newly constructed Terran Defense Station, watching displays that showed humanity's expanding presence throughout the solar system. What had started as a single modified cargo ship had become the foundation for an entire fleet. The principles learned from reverse engineering the alien gift had been applied to 12 new vessels, each one appearing to be a different class of civilian or outdated military hardware. To casual observers, Earth seemed to be building a modest collection of cargo haulers, research vessels, and system patrol craft. The reality was far more impressive. Each ship in the human fleet carried enough firepower to challenge entire alien armadas, stealth systems that made them invisible to galactic sensors, and AI systems that could outthink any organic crew in space. Dr. Marcus Webb entered the command center carrying reports from the latest round of technological improvements. His hair had gone completely gray during the intense months of development, but his eyes showed the satisfaction of an engineer whose wildest dreams had become reality. "Admiral, the new ships are ready for deployment," he announced. "All 12. Vessels have passed their final tests and are standing by for orders." Admiral Rodriguez studied the tactical displays that showed the locations of each ship in the fleet. They were positioned throughout the solar system, appearing to conduct routine operations while actually forming a defensive network that could respond to threats from any direction. "What about the alien reactions to our expansion?" Rodriguez asked. Dr. Sarah Kim looked up from her communication station, where she had been monitoring galactic information networks. "Admiral, the intelligence traffic is fascinating. Every major power in the galaxy is trying to figure out exactly what humanity is capable of." "Any specific concerns?" "The Rigel Confederation has moved 3 fleets to positions near human space, but they appear to be defensive formations rather than invasion forces," she replied. "The Vegan Military Command has requested permission to send observers to study our ship designs, and the Galactic Council has been holding emergency sessions almost continuously since our fleet was announced." President Hayes arrived at the station for what had become a weekly briefing on humanity's changing position in galactic affairs. The meetings had evolved from crisis management sessions into strategic planning for a future where Earth was no longer a minor player in interstellar politics. "Admiral," she said as she entered the command center, "I understand we have received another formal request from the Galactic Council." "Yes, ma'am," Rodriguez replied, handing her a translated document. "They want to establish a permanent diplomatic mission on Earth and are offering us full voting membership in the Council with territorial rights extending to any system we can claim and defend." President Hayes read through the document with amusement. "6 months ago, they thought we should be grateful for a broken cargo ship. Now they want to give us equal status with civilizations that have been spacefaring for thousands of years." "There is more," Colonel Mitchell added, joining the briefing with his own set of reports. "Intelligence sources indicate that several species are now actively seeking human alliance rather than trying to determine if we represent a threat." "What kind of alliances?" "Military cooperation agreements, technology sharing proposals, and joint exploration ventures," Mitchell explained. "The Centauri Federation has even suggested a mutual defense pact that would make human space part of their sphere of influence." Admiral Rodriguez shook his head. "After treating us like primitive children for years, they now want to be our best friends." Dr. Jennifer Park entered the command center from the research laboratories, carrying data tablets that showed the results of their latest technological breakthroughs. "Admiral, you might be interested in what we have learned from studying the ship designs of various galactic powers." "What did you find?" "Every spacefaring civilization in the galaxy builds their technology according to similar principles," she explained. "They prioritize efficiency, elegance, and standardization. They assume that everything will work perfectly under ideal conditions. And the problem with that approach is," Jennifer smiled with the expression of someone who had solved a puzzle that had been bothering her for months. "Human engineering has always been different. We build things to work when everything goes wrong. We design systems that can be repaired with whatever materials are available. We create weapons that can function in situations no sane engineer would plan for." Admiral Rodriguez understood immediately. "You are saying that our military doctrine gives us advantages they never expected." "Exactly," Jennifer replied. "They gave us their technology assuming we would use it the same way they do. Instead, we took their elegant systems and made them into something much more dangerous." The conversation was interrupted by an alert from Liberty, whose AI consciousness now operated throughout the entire human fleet. "Admiral, we are receiving a priority transmission from the Outer System Sensor Network." "What is it, Liberty?" "A large fleet has just entered the solar system. Configuration suggests hegemony vessels, but the energy signatures are different, from standard military ships." Admiral Rodriguez felt his stomach tighten. "How many ships?" 15 vessels, Admiral. But they are not approaching in attack formation." They appear to be requesting permission to approach Earth. President Hayes looked at the tactical displays with concern. Could this be another invasion attempt? Unlikely, Liberty replied. The lead vessel is broadcasting diplomatic identification codes and requesting safe passage to Earth orbit for what they describe as a surrender negotiation. The silence in the command center was broken only by the soft hum of electronic systems, as everyone processed what they had just heard. The same hegemony that had tried to conquer Earth 6 months earlier was now asking permission to surrender. Put them through, President Hayes ordered. The main display filled with the image of a hegemony commander who looked nothing like the arrogant officer they had faced during the first battle. This alien appeared nervous, humble, and distinctly uncomfortable. President Hayes of Earth, the commander began, I am Fleet Admiral Zarthek of the Hegemony 3rd Expeditionary Force. I come under flag of truce to discuss terms for the cessation of hostilities between our peoples. Admiral, President Hayes replied carefully, I was not aware that hostilities were continuing. Madam President, the destruction of our invasion fleet was a clear demonstration of human military superiority. The Hegemony Council has concluded that further conflict with humanity would be inadvisable. President Hayes exchanged glances with her advisors before responding. What exactly are you proposing, Admiral? Complete withdrawal of hegemony forces from human space, recognition of human territorial claims throughout this system, and establishment of formal diplomatic relations, the alien commander replied. In exchange, we request assurance that human forces will not take offensive action against hegemony territories. Admiral Rodriguez leaned forward. Are you asking us to sign a peace treaty? We are asking you not to destroy our civilization, Admiral Zarthek replied with remarkable honesty. Our analysis of your capabilities suggests that your fleet could eliminate hegemony military forces throughout this sector of the galaxy. The negotiations continued for several hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. The hegemony agreed to recognize human sovereignty over any territory humanity chose to claim, provided detailed intelligence about other potential threats in the region, and offered to serve as intermediaries with other galactic powers who might be uncertain about human intentions. As the hegemony fleet departed under human escort, President Hayes called a meeting of her senior staff to discuss the implications of what had just occurred. We have gone from being ignored by the galaxy to having major powers surrender to us without a fight, she said, as they gathered in the station's main conference room. How do we handle this kind of influence responsibly? Admiral Rodriguez had been thinking about this question since the first battle. Ma'am, I believe we need to establish clear principles for how humanity interacts with the rest of the galaxy. What kind of principles? We do not seek to conquer or dominate other civilizations, he began. But we will not tolerate being treated as inferior or primitive. We are willing to cooperate with species that respect human sovereignty and capabilities, and we will respond with overwhelming force to any attempt to threaten Earth or human space. Dr. Sarah Kim nodded approvingly. That approach sends a clear message without being unnecessarily aggressive. The galaxy needs to understand that humanity is now a major power, Colonel Mitchell added. But we also need to show that we can be reasonable partners rather than just dangerous enemies. 6 months later, Admiral Rodriguez stood on the bridge of his flagship as it patrolled the outer boundaries of human space. The ship still appeared to be the same battered cargo hauler that had started everything, but its capabilities had continued to evolve as human engineers found new ways to improve upon alien technology.